First of all, thank you everyone, because this is probably the premium marquee event of Utah Tech Week, which is going on right now. It started yesterday, and there's 180 events that are happening across Utah. And my partner Trent Mono started it. So go to UtahTechWeek.com if you guys want to see what else is happening. But this and the event after at the library are going to be, I think, the two best events of the whole week, because we have Bryan here from LA to teach us some stuff. So right after this at the library, there's another event. Some of you might be registered. So here we go. So biggest thanks, Johnny over there. You're in his house right now. Thank you, Johnny. Johnny's done a few things here in Utah to make Utah a special place. He was a co-founder of Omniture and now doing Observe Point and many other philanthropic good things, like providing the space for this event. And we wouldn't have the Utah that we know if it wasn't for Johnny P. So thank you for everything you've done. And he loves audio mixing and doing all this. So this is his hobby, and he is good at it. So appreciate you making the space today. I want to say big thanks to Carl Youngblood. He's right back there in the purple suit. If it wasn't for Carl, this event wouldn't be happening. I had an idea, and I'm like, I really want to get Bryan here for Tech Week, and Carl made that happen and has been communicating with him this whole time to have him come out today. Next, there's been a lot of volunteers with food. After we interview Bryan, we're going to have there's a charcuterie up there that you guys can go snack on, so you're not leaving hungry. Nexus IT is sponsoring that charcuterie board. Earl Foote, he'll be here soon. And then we've got massive thanks to Kirk and Ashley. Where are you guys at? Right here, Ashley and Kirk will be doing the interview with Phi. And they've been prepping some zingers for Bryan, so I'm really excited to see what they come up with. So real quick, everyone kind of remembers the first time. I think Bryan's a pretty famous person in the sense that you all kind of remember where you're at when you first hear about Bryan Johnson. And mine was with my uncle Randy Paul. Where are you at? Right there. We're hiking in Ecuador for 8 hours. It was a hike before we went up Cotopaxi. And we're talking about transhumanism, which is a subject he really loves. And that's when I was getting the lowdown on what Bryan was trying to do. And he introduced me. He was talking about Lincoln Cannon and Carl and Bryan. I'm like, man, I really want to get close to this person who, built up Venmo, sold that, and is now working completely on longevity. And so 2 years later, here we are. I knew Bryan was becoming a household name when I was in Tokyo with my family in March, and Natalie and I went out to this little 7-seater sushi restaurant, and I'm talking to these Germans. They're asking me what I do. I'm like, well, I'm working on this, healthcare AI thing, and they're like, do you know Bryan Johnson? And I'm like, absolutely. And so he all over the world, this individual has become pretty infamous for many different things. And my favorite is when I invite people to events like this and seeing the reaction, because everyone has an opinion of what Bryan's up to. And it's like some of them are, let's see, I wrote some of them down. It's like, is that guy living forever? Is that the dude who takes blood from his son, the vampire? Is that the guy trolling Elon Musk? But my favorite was my mom's question, is that the guy having all those erections at night? And so my dad and her, they're here. So I think they're here for some tips and tricks from Bryan and his infamous erections. So we're going to learn a lot today, and I hope you ask some questions, Mom. I really do. Bryan Johnson's parents are here too. Where could you guys raise your hands? They're somewhere. They'll come in here. But his parents are here, so a little reunion we have here in Provo today. I don't want to take up any more time. That's it. I just wanted to introduce. I think Bryan's coming up, but let's get our interviewers up here, Kirk and Ashley, and they've got some questions, and then whenever Bryan's here, we're ready to go. Carl? Okay. As you know, he's got a routine, and we had to do this right now because even in the afternoon, it's a different. He's following his protocol to a T, so he's no longer in charge. He's following the protocol because that's what's going to keep him alive forever. So whatever the protocol's telling him right now. Yeah, let's talk. Let's chitty chat while he's coming up.
I'm not sure if this mic is. Give that a
Pop,
shot.
pop, pop.
No.
I agree with Ashley. Why don't we do? Why don't you guys? Why don't you got the only working one?
We can share the mic. All right, Bryan, welcome. Come join us.
There we go. Yo.
Bryan, thank you for visiting us. It's great to have you here. My name is Kirk Ouimet, and I'm here with Ashley, one of the co-founders of our company, Phi. And I just wanted to take a brief moment to introduce ourselves. My background is I started a company and out of BYU, sold it to Snapchat, moved to LA, and I did a direct trade of my health for wealth. And a few years, I think about it was 2 years ago, one of my friends and mentors, Tyler, who's here, told me about some of the stuff that you were up to. And we got really excited that there's another person out in the world that was dedicating their lives to trying to figure out how we can have better functioning body and minds. So just really grateful to have you here. And Ashley, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. So I'm Ashley. I'm a co-founder at Phi, and I'm the director of physical and mental wellness. So I absolutely love what you're doing to take care of yourself, physically and mentally. And originally, I'm a physical therapist, a doctor of physical therapy. So I've spent a lot of time in the world of orthopedic, injury rehabilitation, injury prevention, and sports performance training. But more recently, gotten a life coaching certification because of this observation I was making over the 13 years of practice, and that was a specific mindset that my patients would come in with and how much it affected their prognosis and their path toward healing. So I have questions for you about your mindset and your protocol. Do you want me to head into that, Kirk, or do you have more?
Are you okay if we start with questions right away? Go ahead, Ashley.
Okay, so this was the observation, and that was patients would come in, and if they thought they were going to get better and that I could help them, they got better 3 to 4 times faster than if they came in catastrophizing over the injury. A lot of times, a previous doctor would tell them, you're never going to be the same again. And so many times we hear from doctors, well, that specific part of the body has very limited capacity to heal itself. And so then they thought everything was going to be different. And they did take 3 to 4 times longer to recover. And my job became coaching the mindset around that. And so what I've observed in you and your protocol is this incredible mindset and mind control toward a very specific goal that very many people think is impossible, but it's your true desire. It's what you want. And so even to the point where I've heard you say that the protocol, the blueprint protocol, is the boss over your brain. Can you speak to the details of developing that mindset, especially from having previously experienced depression?
Yeah. First, hi everyone. Really nice to see you. I feel like I'm back home. I grew up in Springville, and I spent the past few days in Utah. Hi, Lincoln. Carl and Lincoln are some of my best friends. I spent the past few days in Utah here revisiting my stomping ground. So going to my old home and schools and friends. And so it's been a really wonderful experience to collide my different worlds. So I guess I'm in a very pensive disposition about life and where I was and where I am. So maybe the context behind this question is I like the thought experiment that if you lived in the year of 1870 and the future could whisper into your ear, the future might say, hey, there are these new ideas about these microscopic objects that are the source of infection. They're called germs. And you can't see them with the naked eye, but that's what's happening when doctors deliver babies and they don't wash their hands in between, or it's what happens when you perform surgery and you don't wash the instruments. Now, if you lived in the 1870s, your natural disposition might be, that's crazy. I mean, that's weird. You're telling me that something I can't see is the source of this infection and causing death. Now, if you're open-minded, you might say, okay, that sounds weird. It challenges many of the notions I understand about reality, but I'm going to be open to this concept. And we know throughout history that this has repeated itself all through time, that the future is always present. Right now, it's present. And the majority of our ideas are representations of dead people, and we're living them out, but we treat them as universal truth. And so the question is right now, if the future could whisper into our ear right now, what would they say? And if they said something, would we bat it down and say, that's probably not possible? Now, some things are probably true, but other things might stick. And so with this idea on Blueprint, what I tried to say is if the future could talk to us, what they might say is that we have reached a point of technological and medical progress where death is no longer inevitable, or at least we might be able to radically extend how long and how well we live. And so the whisper is, don't die. Above all things, don't die. And when you understand that that might be the message, then what you're talking about of practicalities, they start rolling themselves out. And that's the entirety of this discussion. What I'm trying to suggest is, and specifically, I'd like to use the idea of the 25th century whispering. But to me, that's really the culmination of this moment that we all exist.
Thank you.
I didn't even answer your question.
I love it, though. You know, I love that being future-focused is what I'm hearing from you essentially helped you to develop this mindset and writing the future in the way that you want to, kind of going into like the future store and putting into your basket whatever you would want.
Yes,
it to be.
like the practical answer to your question is what I wanted to show with Blueprint is I wanted to show that we could build an algorithm that could take better care of me than I can myself. And so Homo sapiens have been the dominant form of intelligence for 200,000 years. We reign supreme with intelligence. And there's a new form of intelligence in the form of artificial intelligence that is becoming better every day and doing the things that we do. So when it drives our cars, we're like, that's cool because it's potentially safer. When it flies our airplanes, when it reads images for cancer imaging, we give thumbs up, or when it drives get us to a destination. And what I was trying to say is, it's now potentially in the realm of what we consider to be the most sacred of all things, which is deciding what to eat, when to go to bed, what nutrition to put in my body. And even though Blueprint is very analog in its implementation, I wanted to show that just like when the first message with the telegraph was sent, the Pony Express was dead. Now, it was sad that people were no longer going to ride horses to deliver mail, but the telegraph was making it obsolete. First time GPS allowed the arrival of a new destination, maps on the lap were dead. And so what I'm basically saying with Blueprint in its most extreme form is the mind as the primary source of intelligence to manage our health and wellness is in its final stages. And this new algorithmic inputs are now going to run our lives. So if you think about it from a very practical sense, no one here right now is thinking about breathing. Now you are, but you weren't before. It just, it just happens. No one thought this morning when you ate food about digestion. It just happened. And so what I'm suggesting is the extension of autonomy is going to go further and further to maintain, as perfect health as we can. And so that's what we've tried to demonstrate in an analog form, is that the technology is here and that a new era has landed.
Thank you.
What I love about that, and our company, Phi, is actually building products that are using artificial intelligence to create and manage and track all of your health journey. So imagine ChatGPT, but contextualized with your HIPAA data so that you can continue to speak with it. And one of the fundamental things that we believe is that data is a key in order for us to learn how to take care of our bodies and give them everything they need. And I'm so optimistic like you, because I believe we're at a turning point in the history of maybe the entire planet of us finally being able to be to a point where we can understand and leverage machine intelligence to understand our 3 trillion cells. My question for you, and this is from my good friend and mentor Tyler, who first introduced me to you online, was we read about how you were striving to live to 200 years old. Obviously on your chest, we don't want to die at all. Do you believe that the medical technology is present and here today for you to accomplish that goal of 200 years? Or are we banking on a medical advancement that has yet to occur in order to hit that goal?
Yeah. Yeah. Homo sapiens have been able to reliably, well, with some degree of accuracy, predict the future for 200,000 years, where you can say, okay, I'm born into this existence, I can see what previous generations did before me, I can model out what my life is likely going to be like. So in the 1990s, you could say, okay, in the US, I'm going to finish high school, I'll go to college, I'll learn this discipline, have a career, retire at 65, and you can basically plan out your life. And we're now in a situation where we cannot plan more than 3 months. It's the first time in the history of civilization that intelligence has a wall of fog. We can't see it. And my son right now, he just went into his first year of school. He has 4 years of school. That's insane what the world is going to be like. What does he study? Now, he's looking at math, physics, and CS, and it's kind of like, maybe we still care about those things. Maybe we humans still have it, but like, how do you even know? And so this idea that we would map 200 years from now is impossible. We can't do 3 months. And that has a really serious practical and philosophical invitation, where we're transitioning from a species of knowing things to a species of not knowing. And that's happening so fast. So we have approached reality from a first principles perspective. We acquire knowledge, we try to make few assumptions, we stack it, and we then do our behaviors and have these feedback loops. And now we're walking into the unknown, unable to do that process. And it's a exact opposite way of being as we have been. So we derive security and confidence from knowing. And when we don't know, we feel fear, and we pause and we stutter step. And so in this case of the 200-year goal, I think it is an interesting frame. It also it triggers all these defense mechanisms where people will want to shoot it down. They want to kill the idea because they'll say, I'm going to be bored. I don't know what to do. I would rather live a robust 65-year life than I would a boring 200-year life. And so humans have all these conditional responses. And I imagine in this situation, if we're talking to Homo erectus a million years ago, and we say, Homo erectus, how's it going? You have an axe. Like, what do you imagine of life? And they're thinking, like, I've already slayed all the animals in the area. Like, I've kind of done the thing. I would kind of be bored. Homo erectus would not be able to talk about all the things we're doing today, like have a magic box in front of you that allows you to talk to any human at any time of the day and to create new forms of intelligence. And so the question is, in this moment, are we Homo erectus? We don't think we are. We think we're the apex of intelligence, kind of default to that, but maybe we are. And so maybe we know nothing about what our future preferences or opinions or wants may be, and this is the state of unknowing, is our minds desperately want to know. And to me, this is like the layered challenge and opportunity we all have, because it's kind of counterintuitive to how things are today for us.
Yeah, I think one of my philosophical beliefs is that while everyone can pick how long, or anyone can have an opinion on how long they would want to live, I think that it would be ultimately a human choice for us to be able to decide how long we want to live and not to have disease or death overtake us unwillingly. And I'm really seeing this hit close to home with my dad now, because he's 69 years old, and he's now accrued decades of damage from all of the various things that you accumulate throughout life, like kidney disease and all these other things. And me and my dad are both engineers by nature, and I've always been taught by him and believe that we can figure this out. And we're now at a special time where we have artificial intelligence to be able to parse vast amounts of information way beyond, just as you're speaking, anything that we can, in a single human brain, be able to understand. But what I love, especially about what you're doing now with your study and the launch of your first product, where you're going out and you're saying, let's gather a group of people and let's start doing real research on how Blueprint affects them and their biomarkers. And I think that this is setting the stage to share information with the world that is going to be so precious. And so I'm just really grateful for you taking that effort. And one of the things that we want to do with our company is have our conversational AI app be something that will allow people to log their whole health journey with, and then be able to share that information and collaborate. Because I think we can solve this problem together. One of the things that I really believe is that if it's possible to do in physics, then it's allowed. And so if we can figure out how we can get our bodies into an ideal state, that's like a worthy and admirable goal that we should pursue. Ash, would you like to go ahead with another question?
Yes, so I'm thinking of kind of getting into nature and nurture. So your workout room is covered in this really cool wallpaper to where I think you said it makes you feel like you're in the forest while you're exercising. And one of our goals at Phi is to really strike a blend and a pure balance between technological advancement, innovation, and nature and nurture. And so our symbol that's right behind you is a circle inside of a square. And so we're working toward building centers and places where people can attend for their health. And what we want is that when they come through, they know they're surrounded with beautiful things, with nature and nurture, but they also have the best technology available to them. And I'm wondering, how have you found this balance? Specifically, we want people to actually feel like they have healers around them, so that their doctors, their physical therapists, their trainers kind of have that sixth sense of nurture and like radiance and joy, and can really see them as an individual. So you've worked with a lot of scientists, a lot of doctors. Have any of them stuck out to you as healers? You mentioned one that coached you as if you were giving birth. Oh. And I can't remember what the test was, but you kind of talked about her energy and how cool it was, because it was kind of a simple test, if I remember, but she kind of coached you as if you were giving birth.
Yeah, I was doing a spirometry test, so looking at my diaphragm capacity and lung strength, and we generated 12 biomarkers to look at the ages of my lungs. We were at UCLA, and this woman she was just nothing remarkable about her until we got into the test room. And then we got there, and she just locked into this mode. And I put my mouth on the spirometry device, and she just went, she's like, "You ready for this?" Go! And it just gave me the coaching. It was like this. It was one of the most energizing anti-aging tests I've ever done in my entire life. But she was such a beautiful human. I've never seen anyone love what they do so much in the world of testing. Yeah, I mean, I guess your question reminds me, I just finished reading Robert Sapolsky's book, Determined. He's a professor at Stanford, and he tackles the concept of free will, like, do we have free will? And he looks at it from a perspective of neuroscience and quantum theory and anthropology and like all these different disciplines. And he basically taught me, if someone ever asks you about free will, to never express an opinion, because until you understand the entirety, it's a pretty difficult question to answer. But what he did say is he does this experiment where people come into his office and there's a pen on his desk, and he'll pose the question, do you think you have free will? And there's one of two responses he typically gets. The person, if they, in response, if they pick up the pen and pull it up and they say, if I didn't have free will, I couldn't have done that. And he said that in that moment, the way to understand free will is to understand that the reason that person did that is a branch structure of thousands of weighted actions. So whether that person decided to take that action depended upon ancestry going back thousands of years. It depended upon how well they slept the night before. It depended upon their cultural heritage. There's thousands. And so that person doesn't understand this 10,000 branch structure influencing the moment. They think they're acting independently from all forces, when really we are highly influenced. The probabilities create these models. And so when you talk about healers and infrastructure and doctors, to me that's what it sounds like, is we're trying to create an environment for our existence that's this weighted branch. It's almost like a neural net, a weighted structure that increases the probabilities that we will make decisions that align with our best selves. And so, yes, the wallpaper in my gym slightly improves the probability that I will be a better version of myself. And maintaining proper posture maintains a slightly better. Nope.
Kirk sat up straighter. Yes, good. Everybody sit up tall.
Slightly increases. But yeah, this is like if you think about the future of our, like we build society where we're all influenced by thousands of factors every day, including this environment, this conversation, my clothing, that we'll be able to isolate these variables with data, and we'll be able to build these structures that contribute. So when you understand reality through that kind of mathematical model, you can do the design, because you know they really do affect all parts of our existence, even if we can't internalize and understand it.
Right. Thank you.
So Bryan, one of the things that I've been stressed out about, and I hope that you can ease my stress, is I've been thinking about the relative aging of our body versus our brain. And one of the things that I've been worried about is if we can, let's say that blueprint works, and we can get to 100 years old, and you can be looking just like you're looking now or even younger. Is there any type of entropy in how the brain is structured that imposes some physical limitation that we should be concerned about? Or do we think that the body and the brain are deeply interconnected, and if we can maintain the health of the body, then the brain can benefit and last just as long?
Yeah. So the way I heard your question is, I'll address it in two parts. One is that a common reaction in viewing what I do is that it's overwhelming, which is true. And the second is that personalization is important, which is kind of true. But the way to soothe that anxiety and the way to actually get yourself in a good place, this is for optimal brain health and everything else, is to understand that there are power laws at play that everyone in this room can do. So the 5 power laws, that you look at all the evidence. 1 is don't smoke. 2 is eat 6 hours a week of exercise. So the details of that, it's 4.5 hours in zone 2 through 4. So that's roughly 110 BPM to 159 BPM. It changes a little bit according to your chronological age. And then 90 minutes a week above 159. And then 3 is a BMI between 18.5 and 22.5. Then 4 is a blueprint-like diet. And 5 is little to no alcohol. If you do those 5 things, you get roughly 32 years of life. You'd have a life expectancy of around 92. Now that also, here's the bad news, that also means you need to stop the bad stuff. So whatever your thing is, whether it's peanut butter at 11 o'clock at night, or whether it's the cookies or whatever, bad things have a negative effect. And so in this question, I guess, a lot of people want to do things that are positive for their body and their mind, but they get stuck on the personalization, and then it's overwhelming, and then they do nothing. They feel paralyzed. And so my experience has been these power laws help make it understandable, so people can say, I can do something that affirmatively is positive for my health, and I don't need to feel overwhelmed with this endless list of stuff.
One of the challenges that I have is that my brain wants me to eat Sour Patch Kids.
These are what I'm talking about. Everyone's got their thing, yeah.
And so what tips do you have on how I can overcome that archaic dopamine system that wants me to trash my body?
Yeah, I had the same, not Sour Patch, but I call my version of myself Evening Bryan. He showed up at 7 p.m. And so he would be on shift when I was tired and I had fought the day's battles at the company. We bathed and fed the kids, had a fight with a partner, and then you settle in and you just want to be soothed from the pain. And sometimes that's the kitchen or the pantry. And I tried to stop this guy hundreds of times from doing it. And no matter how much I promised myself I wouldn't do it, I would do it. And then that would wreck my sleep. It would make the next day awful. I would be grumpy and irritable. It would lower my mood. Had this really compounded effect where life kind of was not great. And so one day, out of desperation, I said, "Evening Bryan, you're fired. I'm done with you. Like, you make my life miserable." And weirdly, I kind of had a smirk and was like, okay, this is kind of an interesting thought. And I just made a rule that between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m., Bryan could not eat, no matter what. He couldn't even eat broccoli. It was just nothing. And so I wrote down his name, Evening Bryan. I made a list of all of his clever arguments, like just today, this is a special occasion, just one, all the clever things he said, and very persuasive. And then I would say, "Thank you for your suggestions, Evening Bryan. We are not going to do that." And I was slowly able to wrestle control, and then I could go to other versions of Bryan that I didn't like and say, "Hello, Bryan. Like, I appreciate your existence. We're also going to stop doing these things." And remarkably, I would say, I have almost eliminated all negative behaviors in my life.
Oh, wow.
I just don't have vices. And it's actually remarkable coming from a place where I was just unable to control myself in the most basic of ways. And it's such a liberating experience where I can now, if I feel the urge to do something, I can look at that and say, I know what pain it's going to cause. It's absolutely not worth it, and I don't want it.
Just to ask a quick follow-up, if you don't mind, Ashley, do you find that meditation or mindfulness plays a role in Blueprint, or how do you consider like times of deep thinking or meditation? Are those part of the protocol, or?
Yes, yes, that really has to do with sleep. And so I would suggest, my suggestion to all of you would be to make sleep your number one life goal. There's literally not anything that is above sleep, because there's nothing that influences your conscious existence more. And when I did a study with my company, Kernel, where I looked at my brain and we gauged my capacity to have willpower, and my willpower went down proportionally relative to how much deep sleep and how much REM sleep I got. And so the less REM and deep I had, the less self-control I had, which increased the likelihood that I would eat poorly that night, which would wreck my sleep again. And so if you want more power to be the person you want, you get more sleep. And this is why sleep is the number one priority, because then it has this domino effect in the opposite direction, leading to other positive things.
So Evening Bryan's power is correlated to how much sleep?
Entirely. And so any of you who are wrestling with yourself on anything, sleep is your first remedy, your first medication, your first intervention. Nothing beats it in its power.
I love that. You know, I got the chance to work with veterans over the path of my career, and I could always tell when they weren't sleeping. Like, we'd be making so much progress, and then all of a sudden the inflammation's coming back, we're losing strength gains. I'm like, you're not sleeping, are you? You know, and so it's huge. And this concept of versions of ourselves, I love it. And I hadn't heard of it until about 2 or 3 years ago. And I was like, what is this? What do you mean versions of ourselves? And it has propelled me so much in the last couple of years. And I want to know for you, what impact does it have for you in your significant relationships? Where I'm going with that is I believe that healthy significant relationships can impact longevity and even biological age reversal. You know, we have more of a will to live, and we feel younger when we're in healthy relationships. I haven't looked at the data. I haven't looked at the research. Is that an area that you've seen actual data on, and is it a part of your protocol?
Yeah, we've approached this largely so I guess the thing we've tried to do at Blueprint is more than anything, we've tried to earn people's trust. And health and wellness is a world that's kind of a jungle of opinions. If you're a layperson like me, going out and trying to find out what to do, you're confronted with dozens of opinions, and they all conflict. So you can give the same scientists the same papers, they have different conclusions. And knowing that, we tried to say, can we basically punch through the noise and establish trust that we actually, and so I say tongue-in-cheek that Blueprint is the best protocol built in human history, and prove me wrong with your data, because no one has yet to do that. Now, if someone does, amazing. It will be the next iteration, which will be wonderful. So on this question with meditation, we haven't gone into it extensively because we want to approach it with an evidence-based approach. The moment we walk into anything where we don't have the sturdiness of the evidence, we're just like anyone else, and the opinion is just going to be washed away. And so what I can say from the data perspective, what we have analyzed, is that my deep sleep, which is the most powerful for my mood, is deeply connected to my meditative practice before bed. And so if your head hits the pillow and you're still working on, in your mind, the fight you had in the day, or the fire at work, or the problem you're trying to solve, or whatever you're doing, if your head hits the pillow, you will ruminate all night long, as you all know. And so all night you feel like you're in this light sleep ruminating on the same thing continually. So the meditative practice is meant to sever that and say, you are now in sleep mode, so any incoming thought that's to say, hey, remember that problem, and remember how offended we felt when so-and-so said whatever, like whatever you're feeling, you need to stop that and say, we are now entirely focused on sleep. That has produced the highest yield. And then again, when it feeds sleep, it feeds everything else. So the meditative practice, I like that connection because I think a lot of people have, we did this at my company, Kernel, we measured people's brain activities when they're meditating. And a lot of people have this idea when someone says, I have a meditative practice of this discipline, I do it this much and this way, we perceive them to be a good meditator because we don't know any better. When you put the interface on someone's head, you see everyone's awful. Everyone gets in there and their brains are just going nuts. They can't control their thoughts. They're wandering everywhere. Although Sam Harris was very good. He actually, he was legit good. But it kind of punches through the perception that everyone else is good and you're the only one trying to meditate and you can't even keep your head clean. You have a thought every second taking you on these different directions. So I like the thing of if you can experience deep sleep and you wake up in the morning feeling great and you connect it to your meditative practice the night before and say, that worked, then I think it becomes a meaningful thing where you can tag a result with a practice and it keeps you motivated to do it versus just being discouraged of just trying to close your eyes and just feeling like you're on a whirlwind tour of trying to keep your thoughts in control.
I love that. Thank you.
Let's do a quick time check. Scott, how are we doing on time?
Maybe one more question, and then Q&A.
Okay.
And then break for just eat and read, if that's okay. And we've got to rush you over to the library.
So Bryan, I think we've gathered a little over 50 people that our intention is and our values are aligning with yours, which is we want to manifest a future where we bring more health into our own lives and into the lives of our loved ones. Can you maybe just feel out the room, and if there's, I think the advice on sleep and being able to overcome our vices is really profound. Is there anything else that comes to mind that you would want to share with us in our effort and our goal to live more healthy lives?
Yeah. So, we, like pop culture is a really great tool for us to speak a common language. It brings bridges between people's understanding. And one of the more remarkable stories that have been told over the past couple of years is Lord of the Rings. And who's seen Lord of the Rings for reference? Okay, good. So we have a lot of fluency. So you remember the battle at the end, Helm's Deep, right? The final battle. And they go out and they try to get all the people of Middle-earth to convene and say, we are going to unite against this common enemy. And it's a story of each culture and their own proclivities. Some of these cultures have conflicts between them. But they come together and they ultimately prevail, but it's a long night and it's precarious. And I think in this moment, I would say all of us of Middle-earth, let us unite. And the foe is death. And to get there, however, you need to follow these steps we've talked about. You need to basically smooth out time. So my education is primarily of reality, is reading biographies. I love traveling in time and going back to the 15th century and the 13th century and the 17th century and trying to see what was happening then and then who was able to see the future. Like pluck it out of the air, see it, endure all the hate that they got. Everyone thought they were crazy. A few people might have grabbed. But it's a skill set that has been demonstrated throughout history. And so if you occupy that mindset, you say, you, future, the people in this room, you are building the future. You initiate endeavors that other people sign up for. You're shaping reality. And so in your mindset in doing this, if you can imagine the thought experiment of the future whispering in your ear, you can divorce yourself from time and place right now and say, all this is probably just going to go away. And then you can incorporate what is really happening, that algorithms are getting very good, they'll complement our abilities, they'll augment our abilities. So what is this longer term horizon? With that as your basis, you can build a future that is distinct from right now. Whereas if you build within the framework that's existent today, you'll be, like we're talking the environment, you'll be led to make certain decisions that are very 2024 centric. They're not 25th centric, and they may be blind to the realities of what's happening in this larger timescale. And this has, to me, been the most helpful thought experiment. And it would be remarkable if, as a species, if the solve of tribalism, which is the thing that provokes some of the worst acts of violence between humans, if we can solve that and bridge that with a united purpose. And Don't Die is the single most played game across the world every second of every day. It's number one. Capitalism is not even played as much. We breathe every few seconds. We have smoke detectors. We look both ways before we cross the street. We throw out moldy food. So if we say as a species, how could we possibly agree on anything? Don't Die is the only thing we can agree upon. You take one step above Don't Die, and we all disagree on everything. But we can't agree on one thing. And then you bridge that together with the basics of health and wellness. The revolution of the future begins with the food we eat, the time we go to bed, and it's specifically rejecting anything that accelerates your speed of aging and the onset of disease and death. But it's a revolution of thought, of behavior, of norms, and that's what I hope we can lock in, because there's no way this is happening if the community is isolated. It's really everyone together.
Well, we're here to play with you.
Thank you, Bryan.
Let's do a few questions.
So we're supposed to spend about a third of our life asleep. And you said sleep is our number one priority, or should be. So what would you recommend for a good sleep routine? Like, what kind of things do you do? What could the average person that doesn't have millions of dollars, what could they do?
Yeah, the power laws are really straightforward. So I have my last meal of the day at 11 a.m. And so when my bedtime comes around 8:30, my resting heart rate is 46. If it's 46, I'm gonna have a perfect night's sleep. If I eat at 5 or 6 and something like pasta or breads, my resting heart rate is going to be 59, and I'll have 75% less REM and deep. So I've always caveated over the years, I've said, you may be different, but every single time the person comes back and says, you're right, the earlier I eat, the better my sleep. So I would encourage all of you to trial that, eat earlier, and if you want to do dinner with family to be in the social group, fine. Just eat very light, but watch your resting heart rate as a predictor of your sleep quality. Then number two, a lot of you, I don't think have a problem with this, no alcohol. It wrecks sleep. Then other things, if you can control your environment, like a blacked out room or eye cover, that's great. This one's a little controversial. If you can sleep alone, it's great, because when you have sorry everyone. When you have two people who are trying to synchronize their efforts, you can't control bedtimes, wake times, movements, and it creates a lot of variability. With the protocols I've been doing, I demonstrated I'm potentially the world's best sleeper. I had 8 months of perfect sleep using the Whoop device. Now, no human in history has ever done that. Not to say others couldn't, I just did it when not others didn't, but I wanted to demonstrate you can get predictably high quality sleep. So eating time, no alcohol, sleep environment's really important. I have an 8 sleep mattress, so temperature controlled. That's really been helpful. Yeah, those I think are the power laws. But really it's just, then going to bed at the same time every night. So you just say, because right now Sleep is a thing that always gets moved. If your favorite show drops, or you're out with a friend, or you need to finish a work project, or whatever, it's always pushed. And if you make sleep a non-negotiable, everything else is second tier to it, it just shifts your mindset. And so you have to also understand that the psychology of why we think that we're really in grind culture. So there's this idea that if you tell a story about someone who went days on end without sleeping, did some amazing coding and whatever, there's lore and they increase in status in our group. And so that just encourages really bad practices. And so a lack of sleep does not increase the value. A lack of sleep does not increase value, it just lowers the value of what's done. So it is really a myth that cheating on sleep is a good idea.
Thank you.
Dane.
Yeah, right here. Two quick questions. How concerned or not concerned are you about oxalates? And then second, I just bumped into methylene blue a couple of weeks ago. I'm wondering what your take is on that. It's supposed to upregulate your mitochondria.
Yeah. The thing we did at Blueprint that was unique is we looked through every single scientific publication ever published on health span, lifespan. We ranked them according to effect, increase in lifespan or health span extension, and then we scored the believability of the evidence. And then we took that list, 500 things long, and we applied everything in me according to those power laws. And then we did the same thing and put it into a product that could be mass market. And so on oxalates, we definitely have an answer, and I'm kind of answering this question in a different way than you're asking. But basically, if you go down that power list of rankings of the strongest evidence, and you get down to a certain level of oxalates or blank or blank or blank, they're important, but there's basically thousands of these things that pop up along those tier. And this oftentimes is the thing that contributes to paralysis, where if a person wants to do a given thing, they hear someone mention something about blank, and then their entire regimen is just now out the door because they're oh, I'm so worried about oxalates that I can't move forward in life, and they miss the power laws. So yes, we watch oxalates. Yes, methylene blue is something that our team is looking at. Also, we always try to come back to the power laws of where to apply focus and effort. And I've seen this conversation happen so many times in our own internal dialogues where it's so easy to go down a track of something and you lose sight because you can play in this 1,000-point area, but oftentimes there's insufficient evidence to break through the stalemate and everyone's just stuck. So sorry not answering it directly. We try to minimize. We also try to move up the power laws.
Let's take two more questions.
Yeah, my mic is working. I'm right here. Outside of the amazing curated checklist of things to do and not do, how do you see Blueprint and AI shifting a person's belief system? Because you created all these checklists, but I don't think you probably started with checklists. You started with this idea of don't die, and also other belief systems that then got you to these checklists. So how do you see, I guess, AI or Blueprint being able to help shift people's beliefs that then lead them down the right path?
Yeah, I draw the parallel of when the 13 colonies were trying to figure out what to do with themselves, there was this argument, the king is sturdy and powerful and nice to have, and then there was this new emergent ideas of what if we did this new democracy thing where people voted, and the colonies were split, and it was a vicious debate. Thomas Paine wrote this pamphlet, Common Sense, and he said, look, the monarch, I understand it's stable and we know this thing, but they also stink. They're not really good at managing affairs. We understand what's going on the ground here. We have intimate knowledge of our own needs. But then people are you're telling me that this guy's gonna vote? Nah, I'm not gonna believe that. And so it was a very vicious debate. And what I tried to do is, but basically, democracy turned out to be a better form of governance than a monarchy. It was just more efficient at managing, it's better information management theory, and it was superior. What I'm proposing is a new way to understand self. And so currently, we have a monarch, our minds. Our monarch decides everything we do. If we want the brownie, we do it. If we walk down and we look at the menu of items, we choose what we want. And what I said is there's a better approach, a democratic approach. Probe the body and ask the body what it needs. Hey, heart, what's up? How are you doing? Give me your anatomical measurements, give me your functional characteristics, let's look at the evidence, and create a protocol to satisfy the needs of the heart, and then do that with every single organ of the body. And so I said, monarch, thank you, but you're out. a new system of democratic rule you're in, and you're going to be paired with scientific evidence and protocol for this continuous feedback loop. So now my body takes care of itself, and my mind observes it. And so it's just a new way to understand self that transforms how we have been as a monarch to this new system that is basically superior.
One more? Okay.
Right. Bryan, my question is actually about the opportunities and gifts that actually death occasionally provides. But before I get there, I just wanted to thank you and your team for everything you've done, particularly you. There's so many arrows that I see you already taking, and I think you'll continue to take. Because my sense is you've cracked it, and if you haven't, you're really close. And you and other researchers have changed our lives from decades long to centuries long, and we might need a completely new thought process about how to do that. Woo! So thank you. So that kind of comes to death. I think we'd all understand that we live in maybe a vapid, shallow society that promises us fulfillment, and we don't get it. And one of the things that death seems to do, unfortunately, but also as a gift, is provides immediate accounting of our lives. When somebody close to us passes, we think differently about what gives us value and the way we want to live our lives and what we seek to try to obtain, because the current culture that we live in promises us things and does not deliver. So my thought is, have you had a chance to think deeply about these events that occur in our lives that actually truly start to make us understand meaning, and how that might change when we live for centuries and beyond? Thank you.
Your question is at the bullseye of this conversation, and the answer is so elusive. So I'm going to go slow here on this. This is a conversation that typically takes 2.5 hours to get orientation with. So I've been holding these dinners at my house, and we walk through this 5-step process, and we go through the future of our existence. But I'll just cut to the punchline, which is what you said is that we have biochemical states that lead us to certain behaviors. And sometimes when we get shocked into a certain state, like a death or something else, we reconfigure ourselves and have a new set of priorities. But you're basically dealing with a whimsical, unreliant system, the monarch. And what I'm proposing is that there's a better way of existing that doesn't have the same vulnerabilities. Because what you're trying to say is that something like death will snap us into a correct mindset, which is where we want to be. We don't want the evening Bryan to be doing things to increase disease, death, and decay. And so the observation is it doesn't matter anymore what our minds think. It doesn't matter what our minds want. It doesn't matter what we think we know. It doesn't matter. Now, if you fully internalize that, you'll feel inside of you, you're going to start kicking up all these objections because your mind is threatened. It's the power source that's threatened. But this is the transition. If you look throughout history, you can imagine how somebody felt if you said the earth is not flat, or the earth is not the center of the universe, or there are these microscopic objects, or there's another dimension outside of Newtonian physics, or any of these things that broke reality. The same thing may be happening now where our reality may be shattered from the current framework that our minds are the ultimate value generator. Now, this branches off into all kinds of unique complexity, and there's all kinds of great arguments against it. But fundamentally, the argument is that algorithms are better at managing. And if we lock into this continuation of existence, it creates this new mind-body configuration. Now, it may end up being the case that we experience reality just like we do now. We feel like we have free will. We feel like we're experiencing this. We feel like we're making all the same decisions. It's just we're algorithmically very influenced. That may be the case. But the primary, to pull this outside of ourselves, we have a self-harm problem as a species. All of us do. We treat planet Earth the same way we treat our bodies. It's an identical relationship. We're destroying our home, our bodies, and we're destroying planet Earth. And so the question is, how do you respond to the existential nature of this crisis? And so, in short, anything my mind spins up about a future preference or want or imagination, I kind of just chuckle at because it's not working in the current reality of what we're walking into. But it really, even though I'm saying this, your mind already has a response. You've already justified the existence of your mind. You've already given me your counter-argument. You've already shot this down, already. All of you have. So you really need to take the time and sit with it. And that's why it takes hours just to get introduced to the idea of getting comfortable that that may be a form of reality that is just, the future reality may be unimaginable to us in every capacity.
Thank you. I think that's going to wrap it up because I think we want to leave here about 1 o'clock. What would you like to do next, Bryan?
How much time do we have?
It's 12:30, and at 1:30 it's over the Provo Library. So I don't know if we want to mix and mingle, go upstairs and eat, or if you would like to keep answering questions.
Yeah.
Everyone here would love to hear more. So
Yeah, I'd be happy to do more Q&A, so it's more of a group conversation versus a narrow conversation if you guys want. But
okay,
your call.
Let's keep. Does everybody want to keep going? Because I don't think this is going to happen again. I've got you and then Stacy. Okay.
So, question is, you talk about this coming together against death, right? But a lot of the protocols, so I deal in stem cells and exosomes. And just like you, I'm working with upper income people. Same with Blueprint, I imagine it's very similar. So how do you intend to bring this to other cultures and people that don't have the ability financially to maybe follow your protocol exactly? Because I deal with this all the time, where people want this, but they can only afford this.
Yeah.
And they can't get their needs and everything done with stem cells that they want. But so as a company, we've dropped our margins and everything, but it's hard to deal with it. At the end of the day, there's a large cost to some of these things. And so how do you intend, or what have you thought about doing to take this to people that don't have the financial means?
Yeah, we just made Blueprint into a mass market product. So we're playing power laws. So we made my diet into a protocol that costs less than $1,000 a month and has over 100 active therapies embedded in the protocol. So basically my exact diet into a price that is cost competitive with fast food. It potentially is lower cost than groceries. And so we're trying to take a power law of perfect nutrition and take it to the masses. Now there's a power law too because there is individualization according to things, but we generally have hit that. So yeah, we're basically trying to take the first step of one of the top 5 power laws, consumable by everybody, replacing McDonald's. And then the second thing we're doing is I'm currently in negotiation with several companies. Like I just did my first gene therapy. It ranks number 7 on our list as the most powerful interventions known to science. And therapy costs $25,000. And I'm in discussions with the company to bring this to the masses. Basically, like we now have a community of thousands of people that we could do a group buy. And so we could try to become the Costco of longevity therapies and just roll them out to everyone. Blueprint's kind of interesting because we do have a profit incentive in the business, but we kind of don't. We also make everything free. So we're really trying to break this thing out to dramatically reduce costs and scale this to the masses. Almost like a zeitgeist shift of everyone can have enhancement. So yeah, I'm with you. We're right there. We're trying to scale as fast as possible through the basics and advanced stuff.
So my question applies more to a behavioral aspect of this. So if you're talking about this prescription of don't die, right, and you have sort of this systemic, internal, natural mechanism on a cellular level that's to stay alive, which is true. But also, even on that mechanism, you have apoptosis, where a cell would kill itself if it needed to. So how do you implement something like Blueprint into a population in a behavioral health setting of suicidal ideation or mental illness?
Yeah, I've been there. I wanted to commit suicide for quite some time. Yep. I'm pretty happy I didn't do what my mind said. This kind of goes back to the Ulysses situation where he wanted to experience the siren song, and he asked his crew to tie him to the mast because he knew if he heard the siren song, he would go out and it would crash. He would lose his life. And so he's like, I know I can't control myself, so tie me to the mast. No matter what I say, don't release me. And that's true in psychiatrics too, right? There's conditions where the patient is not They can sign away to say, I enter states where I'm not a trustworthy person, and when I enter those states, you are authorized to intervene to stop me from doing self-harm. So it's a legitimate practice in medicine. Yeah, this is, I think, the interesting thing for all of us. After I sold Braintree, Venmo, I invested in a bunch of deep tech and things like nanotechnology, genetics, synthetic biology. And what I was trying to figure out is how close are we to being able to reliably engineer reality with atoms and molecules and perceptions and all the above. And we're there. We can manipulate objects at the atomic level and on up, and biological systems. And so when you have that, we now have this ability to engineer existence across our entire body. The biochemical processes, our understanding of reality. And so we have really low-tech solutions now to deal with mental illness, like all the SSRIs, like they're really crude and really bad. And so my answer is not so much like what it is now, but we're like bridging into this future where we have root-level admin access to the elements of reality creation. So to me, it's a pretty exciting moment where, like, when I was depressed, I had basically no way to change anything about it. It was pretty helpless. So I hope that we're really on the cusp of radically changing that with the tools. But yeah, like, I guess current state of being human is pretty brutal in dealing with depression and anxiety and all the other things that ail us. I don't think I answered your question at all.
I was just curious if Blueprint has an avenue of introductory of something like this to someone that's at that state.
Yeah. So yeah, usually our advice is get your basics right. So go to bed, like make sleep your number one priority, have a good diet, and get exercise. Like if you have mastered those three things, go up to your next level. So we call it level 1, level 2, level 3, but we're always saying level 1 is your power laws, then level 2 are your more specialized interventions, and level 3 is out on the cutting edge. But most people in that state, understandably, struggle to have the basics done. So it just exacerbates the problem.
Hi, Bryan. Thank you. Oh, sorry. So I struggle a lot with this concept of meditation. When you said, people will try to meditate, but their brain keeps, that's me. In 1986, I was at a Springsteen concert, and something happened in that when Born in the USA came on. And there were 70,000 people, but it was just Bruce and me. Yeah. And I looked at the guy next to me, and it was just Bruce and that guy. And what Bruce and that guy were going through, one-on-one, took nothing away from what he and I were going through. It was transcendent. Is that meditation? Is that what the goal? Or I'm sorry I'm not articulating this question very well, but I've rarely ever hit that kind of feeling. And is that what you hit when you meditate?
Yeah. So cool for you to have that experience. I don't know. Yeah. So I guess I would eagerly acknowledge, I don't know. So I'm sure someone knows more about this topic than I, and your experience sounds amazing. But yeah, I really have nothing to offer. I guess I would use your question as an opportunity to say, answer a different question, which is when I do these dinners, I use a few thought experiments to set the stage. And I'll typically say, okay, let's imagine we're in a situation. I ask for a volunteer. I say, let's imagine we're having a social meetup, we're just having fun. I say, I really work on my hydration. I've lately been trying to be more hydrated. And I turn to you as my friend and say, hey friend, like how much water should I drink a day? And typically if the person's doing the thought experiment with me, they'll say 8 cups. I say, great, how do you know that? Well, I think my friend, I read that somewhere, I have this really big flask, it's pink. Honestly, I love pink, it's so pretty. Sometimes I take it home, my dog barks at the pink flask. I don't know why, but Susie's mom, she loves drinking water so much, but she's always in the bathroom. I don't know how she gets any work done, honestly, I don't know. She has this big screen, but yeah, it's 8 cups, great, thanks. And so then I say, okay, how do you know it's 8 cups? Oh, I've read it somewhere. Have you seen the evidence? No? So how do you know it's 8 cups? And if the person's paying attention, they'll say, I don't know. And so it's meant to call attention to what we do as a species, which is there's a difference between social cohesion and truth-seeking. And we need to identify what mode are we in this moment. Now, I could certainly respond to your question and try to be additive to your statement, but I really have nothing to say that is additive because I don't know. And so in this situation, we are in a mode of we're doing truth-seeking. Well, we're also doing social cohesion, but I am playing a role of offering something that is evidence-based from my experience. So that would probably be what I'd try to highlight as the answer is like when we're trying to be truth-seeking beings, we identify which mode we're in.
Thank you.
I'm terrible at answering questions. I'm sorry, everyone.
How do you envision the future of gene mutation or recessive genes, for instance, genes that predispose somebody to cancer or cystic fibrosis and so on, and how those have become seemingly more common, whether that's because there's greater testing or diagnosis, but what is the future of gene mutation?
Yeah, we looked at gene therapy for 3 years, and I just did my first one, and so we didn't do gene therapy because we didn't think any of them were safe. And that was because the primary delivery vectors of most of the gene therapies out today are via AAVs. And once you get an AAV in, you can't turn off the gene therapy. So if something goes wrong and it has cancer progression, you can't turn it off. And we didn't want to take that gamble. And so what we did is we found a gene therapy that's delivered via a plasmid. And so I got 2 injections on my sides, and a protein sits inside the nucleus, and it basically just generates the protein follistatin. And then if you don't like it, or you don't like the effects, you can just take tetracycline, and it kills it. And so what is encouraging to me is gene therapy, which is the thing that's going to bust open longevity, is here. And we found safer routes for gene therapy, and it still is the 7th highest ranking therapy. It's a 30% extension of life with this therapy. And so it's remarkable. And I'm doing my second gene therapy in 2 months for cognitive enhancement. Same methodology. Plasmid induced, generates a protein, tetracycline killed. And so it's cool because this is, again, why Don't Die matters, is if you take this longer arc and you say, really, where are we at right now? That's what the future whispers, is because we're there. Yeah.
I got a question. Actually, 2 questions. So when you travel, you've got your algorithm that you've built and that you follow. How does that kind of adapt with your daily routine? And second question, for the sake of Scott's mom, could you explain the nightly erection stuff? Can you expound on that for all of us?
My mom is here.
We could do it later. You could answer the first one.
No, I call my mom every week, and I say, Mom, just so you know, I did the following things this week. So yeah, for those of you who don't know, I'm pretty rowdy on social media. I've posted several nudes. I talk about my nighttime erections, stuff that is typically taboo in conversation. And so, so you had a first question.
Yeah, first question is, when you travel, how can you follow your regimen and how do you adapt?
Yeah.
And then the second one.
Yeah, so when I travel, it's really hard. Like basically, it is impossible to find healthy food when you travel. Like it is just, we can't go anywhere. So I'll pack most of my stuff, everything I can to travel with, and then when I show up, I'll go to the grocery store and buy what I can. But it's almost impossible to stay true if you're going to a restaurant. It's just like very hard. The Blueprint food stack solves most of that. So this week here in Utah, I've been traveling with the Blueprint stack for the first time, and it's solved most of my caloric needs. So that's cool that we basically are making inroads there. 2 is we did who am I speaking to? Billy. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So we basically, this project, we've tried to call attention to that if you really want to understand age, you need to inquire the age of every organ of the body. We say that, I'm blank chronological years old. But a more accurate way of explaining age is to say my heart is anatomically this age, my heart functionally is this age, my diaphragm capacity is this age, and so I have hundreds of age markers throughout my whole body. And so my left ear is 64 because I shot a lot of guns as a kid. In Utah culture, we had a lot of guns. And I was right-handed, and so I had the gun like that, exposing my left ear to a lot of the sound. And so I suffered between 2,000 hertz and 8,000 hertz. I'm basically deaf in my left ear. And so understanding the age of my entire body is really helpful. So one of the things we've been looking at is not just sexual function, but males and females have nighttime erections. And as you age, they decrease. And it's actually a really important marker of cardiovascular health, physiological health, and sexual health. And there's a company that created a device for men to measure nighttime erections. And it's really been interesting because, so I've done this, it's a little cube that men put on, and it's so small you just forget that it's on. And it's harder to measure female erections. Like, there's no device to get at it. So even though females do have erections, and a lot of my friends, when they read about this, they would message me privately and say, I think I'm 0. And a lot of them were because grind culture and lack of sleep eliminates that function. And so it's a really good reminder for them that there are serious consequences for not sleeping well. And so we really try to make a point that even though sexual health is largely a taboo topic in society, it's very healthy to make it okay to talk about. And there's also ways to measure it to see how you're doing in life generally. So yeah, we've been doing a lot of therapies to see if we can basically de-age my sexual function in all the things we measure. Thank you.
I'll be following you close.
Mom, how was that?
Okay.
Is that okay?
My wife does the measurement, but I have an extension of his first question about its lifestyle. My lifestyle, I have an aversion to a sterile lifestyle. I know why you're doing it, it's an experiment, but to me that seems like the same thing day in and day out, and I just have an aversion to doing the same thing day in, day out. I live a pretty adventuresome lifestyle, outdoor-wise. Don't die is probably not something is a reality to me. A lot of things I do, dying is an option, and that makes that activity more exciting, mountaineering, whatever, or injury. And there's a lot of venturesome people in our culture that they thrive on that, but they also agree with what you're doing. How do you merge the don't die with people, society that needs adventure, and the human race needs adventure. Shackleton knew dying was an option when he went out and did that, but if he aspired to your style of don't die, which I'm not against it at all, but how do you merge the adventure, exploration when you don't know the outcome, and the outcome could be adverse to what you're doing?
Yeah, I wrote a book, Don't Die, that is available on YouTube for free. And in the book, I explore this question. I pose the question, is exploration dead? And I have a few characters who represent the argument, and they say, exploration is dead. We know planet Earth, we've mapped every crevice. There's nothing else to explore, and space is so big, we're not going to be surprised anytime soon. So where do explorers go? And that's really the hypothesis, is I'm saying that the most exciting exploration of existence is on our doorstep. That what we have done for exploration of the physical world has been one thing, but we're now entering into this entirely new existence with the emergence of AI, our interaction with that, and where our minds are going to go. And so I think instead of exploration being dead, we're actually right now at the beginning of the most expansive frontier in history. And that if we can recognize that, we all can sign up to be the explorers of this thing. And the Don't Die framework, you mentioned some of the things you do that's adventurous. If you think about how many of the safety infrastructure that you use, harnesses, seat belts, airbags, tie ropes, like all the things, you are substantially safer now than you were before. So you can take these risks and also have these things. So I was working on this graph this morning. My dad and I were talking. And so this is You probably can't see it, but I was imagining like on this, so basically this first line is the capital that's been invested in dye technologies. So think of it like alcohol and smoking and environmental toxins and all the things that contribute to death. Then you think about the economic curve of don't die. So that includes things like safe water and hygiene practices and antibiotics and seatbelts and all the things that keep us safe on a daily basis. That has also been increasing in spend. And what I'm proposing is in the year 2024, the technologies that accelerate death hit a peak, and then there's a slow downward trend. And the technologies going towards don't die are on an exponential increase. And so if you believe that the next gold rush is don't die, then the corresponding personal accompaniment is that exploration along the don't die exponential curve is the place for people like yourself who enjoy that kind of. And so I'd say that it's probably the most delicious future you could ever want. And not dying is going to give you some unknown number of tomorrows for you to play the games you want to play. So it actually is perfectly aligned with who you are and what you want to do.
I like that. This is the last question, Jeff.
Yeah, this isn't a tactical question. This is a philosophical question. So go wherever you want. But obviously, the death, rebirth, life cycle surrounds us. You just look out the windows and you see it everywhere. Is there not a reason for that? What is the purpose for that, in your opinion? We may be participating in that, or we are participating in that in some form or another. I'm just curious. I was trying to understand your answer before about the death question, which I really liked and I started to get, but just I'd love to end with some more philosophy around that, because to me that seems like the crucial question in all of this, I think.
So I think it's a fun question to ask. Like basically, if we look at 200,000 years of Homo sapiens and you graph that of the cumulative level of intelligence of us as a species, the species plus our technological tools, at what stage over the past 200 years have our objective function been? Right now, we're largely driven by capitalistic objective functions in society. That's our current level of intelligence. Now, as you increase in intelligence, specifically where if AI is, let's just call it 1 billion times smarter than humans in 10 years or 20 years, like some very near state, what is the objective function of this intelligent apparatus? And what I'm arguing is that we might all be motivated to make that objective function don't die. Because we're in this moment where we're baby steps away from superintelligence. Now, how far away? A year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, whatever, it's now. On this longer scale, it's right now. And then if you say, okay, now we're baby steps away from superintelligence, what do we do? And you go out and you survey the world of philosophies and of practical things like capitalism, like help us. What is the practical answer on my daily life? Like, what do I eat for breakfast? What do I do for fun? How do I spend my time? What do I think about? How do I resolve conflict? How do nation states resolve their differences? Like all the millions of things we have to do on a daily basis, what fills that void? And so what I'm personally betting on is as AI progresses, it's going to create a corresponding existential crisis for humans. That the things we've solved right now, like what do I do as a human? How do I feel value? How do I have identity? How do we build community? Do we have nation states? Do I have money? What do I have? Like all the answers, all the things we have to solve as a civilization, we're gonna have to revisit all those questions in this incredibly short period of time because it's gonna change so fast. Now, when that happens, we need to answer all these basic questions. And this is why I go to, like, what is the one thing we all have in common? And so that's why I'm trying to say, Middle Earth, unite. This is the battle of Helm's Deep. The foe is death. That's the only thing we have in common. Now, when Yeah, so, yeah, his question was about indeterminacy. So this is why we don't die, because you have the privilege of expressing that opinion because you're not dead. And everybody wants to express their opinion. And if you're dead, you can't express an opinion. The only thing we can agree upon is don't die. You take one step up and you get that, right? Everyone in the room is going to have your point, you're going to have your view, you're going to have your explanation, you're going to have your needs. That's just us, that's humans. So this is the thing, is if you take stock of this moment, right, and you try to reduce reality to something that keeps existence going. This is like the thing of, like right now I remember growing up in the church, you're given all the answers. You know exactly what's going on. The only objective of life is to obey the rules to get the prize. I was there, I lived it. The reality I understand now is we don't know the rules. We actually know nothing. Now, that does not mean that we can't cooperate. Like, we can absolutely be together at Helm's Deep and do this together. It does mean that there's a diversity of perspectives, but we do align on this one objective. And that's what I really hope we can do is, like, you step one step above, we're going to become tribal, and we don't want to superimpose our views on everyone else, like it's just who we are. There's really an opportunity, if you understand our time and place.
Thank you, Bryan. What's that? Yeah. Okay. Upstairs, there's a spread for everyone to munch on, and I just can't say enough thanks for coming and expressing your views, and that you have days left to have opinion, and you're teaching us not to die, and that's what we wanted to hear today. Thank you, Bryan.
One last thing, I wanted to say that coming into this today, typically when I'm talking, I really don't care what anyone thinks. Like, genuinely, I do not care. And I really maintain that decision because I care more about what the 25th century thinks of me than I care what 2024 thinks of me. Because I view 2024 as dominant of dead people. The majority of the views, opinions, perspectives have been carryovers. And if I cared what people think, I would be hindering my ability to be courageous and brave, to believe things that are not believed. And I would shy away and shun from being ostracized by the group, the things we don't like. I will say, coming into this, I do care about this group, and I didn't take such a brazen approach. I feel like I'm one of you. Like, I have been here, and I understand the mindset better than I do most people. So I didn't really know how this would go today. I appreciate your warmth. You were very generous with me, at least in your body language. You may be thinking other things, but I appreciate it. This was, for me, it was a very satisfying and productive dialogue. I was able to feel you, and so I feel like I've learned a bit more. So thank you for being generous with me.